Howdy, Non here at Information Hire Man, and welcome to another Friday website review for the Ace of Spades. Today we are looking at clicklocal.org.nz for Brent. Let's head over there now. Okay, now in the past I've used a 5-point checklist, which I've kind of modified every time I've done an Ace of Spades, and now I'm going to change things up again because as I work through these principles myself, and I'm finding teaching very helpful for doing that, I'm finding that I want to refine it into a set of principles that makes more sense rather than just looking at specific elements. I want to give you a better idea of how to evaluate any website, even if it isn't a website which follows a kind of typical format or sells something which you're normally used to seeing. So today I'm going to use a slightly different format, and we'll see how it goes, and you're very welcome to leave comments and let me know what you think. So the format is OOD, OOD, and that's simply because I am a giant Doctor Who fan. Actually, it has nothing to do with Doctor Who, but that was a pleasant coincidence. The OOD stands for Orientation, Objectives, and Desirability. So you've probably heard me talk about before, there are 3 questions that you need to answer for your prospect as soon as they land on your website. And you need to do it within about 7 seconds, because if you don't, they're going to go back and go somewhere else. Those questions are: where am I? What can I do here? And why should I do it? So where am I covers the orientation of your user. Make sure he understands where he is. What can I do here covers all the objectives that you want him to fulfill. And let me comment there that when you talk about objectives, you don't necessarily mean the objectives that he can actually see. It's the objectives that you want him to fulfill. So you often get instances where a user will answer the question, what can I do here, with things other than what you want him to answer. So it's important to understand that the question that he's asking himself, what can I do here, isn't always going to be answered the same way you expect. So you need to be sure that you understand how the various elements interrelate and how color and contrast and so on all work to give him a sense of what he can do on your site. And if he's getting the wrong sense, then you need to fix it. And the third question, why should I do it, covers desirability. So you need to make him actually want to do what you want him to do. And the reason I'm using this new checklist, apart from the fact that it's kind of simpler, is that it covers more of the principles behind the things that I've talked about before, the headline, the body copy style, calls to action, and all that kind of stuff. It covers the principles behind them and lets you kind of work those things in as necessary rather than concentrating specifically on them and possibly missing other things as well. For example, one of the things that I've seldom talked about in the past is navigation, even though navigation is very important both for orientation and for giving your user a sense of his objectives on the site. Okay, let's dive into clicklocal.org.nz. The first O, orientation, doesn't score terribly well. I gotta say, when I come to this website, I don't have a good idea of what I'm doing here, and part of the problem there is because of the name, ClickLocal, your community space. I suppose that if I'd been sent there as a qualified prospect, or a qualified user, or whatever the objective of the site is, I would probably feel a bit more comfortable. I would most likely have an idea of what the site is already. But I haven't been sent there in that way. I've been asked to review the site by Brent, and I actually hadn't heard of it before. So when I get there, I see Click Local, but of course the internet isn't a local space. It's an international domain, and so I don't actually know what the word local means. I know that it's a New Zealand website because of the domain name .org.nz, but I don't know where in New Zealand. And it's not very clear, even though down the bottom here it says Hutt City, which I presume is something to do with Wellington, the Hutt Valley. I live in Hamilton, I don't know these things. Even though I live in New Zealand and I understand New Zealand's geography to some extent, I still don't have a good idea of what this place actually is. So this copy here does give me some idea. Talks about the Lower Hutt City Council and so on. Lower Hutt is in Wellington, or near Wellington. But there's no kind of tagline that tells me what I'm doing here. There's nothing to say welcome to Click Local, we are such and such and such, and if you're in the Lower Hutt area, then you can do such and such and such. So I feel a little bit disoriented. There's lots of buttons that I can click on, but nothing to tell me where exactly I am, so I don't have any idea why I want to click on those buttons. Alright, covering the second O, objectives, there are a lot of competing elements on this page in terms of what I can do. Some of the objectives that I'm expecting you want people to actually take, for example, the objective of enter now, aren't very well highlighted. You've got a very subdued blue, and you've got a reasonably subdued darker blue for the text, and it's all cast on this kind of lurid green, which makes it kind of blend away. It just disappears from the eye. It doesn't really sit where you expect it to sit, and it doesn't really catch your eye at all. So I would suggest making that like a nice bright orange would be a very logical colour, because A, orange is a great colour for calls to action anyway, and B, it's a nice contrasting colour to yellow. The Great Light Bulb Project doesn't really tell me a great deal about what you want me to do. It talks about, on the right hand side, winning prizes and so on, but it doesn't actually tell me what the Light Bulb Project is, so I don't know whether I'm eligible to enter. I don't know what I need to do to enter. It doesn't give me enough information to feel comfortable clicking that enter now button. That aside, there are probably other objectives that you want people to fulfill here. You've got quite a lot of things in your navigation, and wow, that's some nice bright navigation right there. But I don't know what exactly the site is about, so I don't know what the objectives are going to do for me. So I feel like I'm just either going to not click anything, or I'm going to click at random and just see what happens if I've got time and I have some reason to stick around, which possibly someone else coming to the site would. You've also got these very standard Twitter, Facebook, and RSS objectives here, and as I say to pretty much anyone who's got these, having the icons isn't really enough. People know what they are, but unless they're actually actively looking to follow you on Twitter or Facebook or to subscribe to your RSS feed already, they aren't going to click on them. For one thing, there's just no obvious benefit to doing it, and for another thing, you haven't asked them to. Let's talk about desirability. Because of the lack of the clarity in the orientation, and because of the subsequent feeling of general discombobulation with regard to the objectives, there isn't a great deal of desirability going on here, and that's certainly not enhanced by any headlines or anything. The Great Light Bulb Project is the one that really jumps out at you because it's probably the largest element on the page, but it doesn't tell me anything that's gonna get me into it. It doesn't make me feel excited. It doesn't tell me any benefits. It doesn't really give me any reason to click on the Enter Now button, even if I notice it. The pictures here, it's a good idea showing what people can win, and I'm assuming those are prizes, but because of the lack of context, I'm not actually certain that they are. If it said something like "win this" underneath with a caption, that would get my attention, and then I'd be thinking about entering, because I see that I'm got the possibility of winning an iPod, or is it an iPod, an iPhone? I don't know. I'm not an Apple guy, or some kind of camera, and who knows what this is, but I'm sure it's interesting. It looks like a sleeping bag, only in comparison to the phone, it's really, really tiny. Is it a sleeping bag for a mouse? Further down the page, you've got your classic 3-column problem, where you've got, aside from the fact that there are lots of links and very little actual explanatory text, you've got this kind of 3 people talking at once issue that's generally known to not be a good thing. And the page goes down quite a long way, and it seems to contain things which are also in the navigation here, but if I click on news, I don't actually just get taken down here, I get to this new page. So it's a little confusing because of the fact that you've got multiple layers of navigation in a sense. You've got the stuff down below to kind of get people into what's going on the site, but at the same time it's a little bit confusing for them because there's a sense of information overload and a lack of clarity as to the site's actual structure. Having said all this, I honestly have no idea what the purpose of the site is. So that would be the first thing that I would want to fix. I would want to go ahead and make that very clear to people arriving on the site what the site is for and what you can do here. Now, I see up here there's about click local. That's a really small link, and I didn't even notice it until right now. It tells me that Click Local is a community-run website for Petone, is it? A Maori word? And surrounding boroughs. Okay. The goal is to promote and strengthen the community. It's about having locals, giving locals a space for groups, projects, and people. Okay, that's all very well. But even that's a little bit vague. Maybe you could give some concrete examples of things that people can do on the site without having to click the More button. I'd also suggest that although using columns is very, well, everyone loves CSS3, and I would love to use it too because columns are cool, but I think in this case it's actually a little bit confusing to read because the columns are quite narrow and not very long in terms of vertical space. Columns really work best when you've got more vertical space, and they really only work online if you can be confident that the amount of vertical space is actually going to fit inside the user's browser window as well. Otherwise they have to keep scrolling up and down, and that really breaks the whole model of keeping on scrolling down to read. Okay, I've said quite a lot. I'm going to start going a little bit long if I keep on talking too much. I hope this has been helpful, as usual. And if you have any comments or things that you think I've missed, feel free to add them in below. That's what the comments are for. Of course, you can always email me as well. And so far I haven't had any hate mail, which I must say is disappointing. I'm really looking forward to getting some, but I haven't really received anything. So if you feel like sending me some kind of abusive comments, by all means, make my day. I always appreciate those. And if you'd like to sign up for the Ace of Spades and you're not already a subscriber, you are very welcome to do so. It's free marketing content every weekday. The Friday Ace of Spades is a screencast, but every other day is an email. And you're welcome to sign up at informationhighwayman.com/Ace of Spades. So until next time, I am Non. I will see you next Friday.